heard my death news twice.
Really?
Once when she was, I think, 8 months pregnant.
They declared you dead.
Yes, she saw on the TV.
Hi, if you're new here, I'm Kylie, just another Army vet, and today I'm reacting to another Beer Biceps podcast. This is Lieutenant General KJS Dhillon opens up on the truth about Kashmir terrorism and more. The Ranveer Show, episode 269, and because of the length of the video, I will be breaking it up into 3 parts. Let's get to it.
There used to be one retired colonel with handlebar mustache, 12-bore gun in his hand, and trying to protect his daughter from everyone around. And he would be carrying that gun even inside his house. And now that image has to change. Soldiering is a serious business. The storytelling about soldier has to be done very, very seriously. We can't say that I am making a movie, but then commercial compulsions want there should be a dance sequence in that, there should be a song sequence in this. How can you have a dance and song on the border? My wife has heard my death news twice.
Really?
Once when she was, I think, 8 months pregnant.
They declared you dead.
Yes, she saw on the TV. She did not want the other Jawans or the officers' wives to see tomorrow morning her in a shattered condition. She held herself together and showed as if it's okay. You can imagine the strength our families have. That is how their sacrifice, their contribution in the soldier's life must be acknowledged, appreciated and honored. I think they are the most powerful women on this planet.
So we've done a bunch of military podcasts where we spoke about combat, operations, military life, the special forces, but we've never spoken to someone who holds this kind of a rank in the military, who's served in this manner in the military. Tiny Dhillon, sir, or KJS Dhillon, served as the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency. What does that even mean? I'll let him explain it over the course of this particular podcast. We covered aspects of geopolitics, we covered military life, obviously, but moreover, we covered a macro view of the military, what it takes to actually operate the military as a whole. And we also spoke about how the Indian military, the Indian armed forces, is perceiving the present times. I highly recommend that you also check out the Hindi episode we did with Tiny Sir. It's incredible. If you understand Hindi, you'll be unlocking another portal of knowledge with that particular episode. But if you want to unlock portals of knowledge anyway, make sure you follow us on Spotify. We're a Spotify exclusive. Every episode's available on Spotify 48 hours before it's available anywhere else in the world.
So if you're new to my channel, first of all, welcome. I'm glad to have you aboard. And second, I did react to a lot of these military podcasts that he was referring to, and I'll go ahead and link some down below in the description box, as well as leave a link as an end screen as well.
KJS Dhillon, sir, on the Ranveer Show, spreading knowledge, spreading perspectives. It's another powerful Indian Armed Forces episode. Lieutenant General KJS Dhillon, sir, we did an incredible Hindi episode. Welcome to TRS English.
Thank you.
How are you, sir?
Oh, always great.
Okay, you had a good time on Hindi?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So, I'm thinking we make this a quick and snappy episode. It's primarily self-education here. I've had lots of military veterans on the show. You were one of our most highly requested military veterans because of your Twitter presence, because of your entire military tenure. There's a lot of curiosity about you. And I highly recommend that audiences, especially if you all understand Hindi, go check out our Hindi podcast for some incredible prequel insights. But this one's kind of a more present times episode, sir. So, did you have fun on the Hindi one?
Yeah, enjoyed it.
Tiny, sir. Why do they call you Tiny, sir? You're easily 6'2", 6'3" at least?
6'3".
You're 6'3". And you're an imposing figure. Like, I can tell that, this... Is there weight training that's gone into this?
So correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming that he's a Sikh, and most Sikhs are actually pretty tall.
A lot of it.
Like your bone structure, everything is like, really strong. I wouldn't want to face you in combat. But
we are friends.
But I have to actually ask you this, sir. With your kind of frame and you're 6'3", your weight training, so you're a white guy and you've got Punjabi genetics. So,
Punjab,
is that
yeah.
an advantage in combat or is it a disadvantage? Because I'm assuming if you're a smaller guy, maybe you're able to maneuver more easily, but correct me if I'm wrong.
See, gone are the days of physical combat. The trench warfare of First World War, Second World War, where you are physically assaulting an enemy, the bayonet fixed, and at times you get into a close quarter combat. These days, it happens very rarely in a conflict situation or a combat situation with counter-terrorist, during counter-terrorist operation, where the terrorist is running out and your weapon has dropped or somewhere you got hold of him.
In recent history, the only time that I've seen the trench warfare is actually in Ukraine, specifically in Bakhmut. And I've actually reacted to a few of those videos, and I can link those down below as well.
And you don't want the collateral damage. So in that type of a situation, maybe there is a close quarter battle. Otherwise, as officers, your height, your weight, and other things, they don't matter.
What matters?
It is your thinking faculties, your leadership qualities, how you can assess the situation, how you can plan your next move, and how you can lead your men with valor, courage, and bravery.
Yeah.
That is what matters. And in that, the physical appearance has got no place.
Okay. Back when you were very actively a combat soldier, and I'm assuming that at a certain age, maybe the army doesn't allow you in combat. It probably works just like a sport because physical faculties start withering off at a certain age. But back when you were like actively involved in combat, were there any hand-to-hand combat situations that you had to go through?
Not individually.
Okay.
Not individually, but there were instances, especially in the built-up areas during counter-terrorist or counter-insurgent operations, where an insurgent or terrorist was trying to escape the cordon, and the boy had caught him, but he didn't want to fire because the fire at that situation can go into a neighboring house and injure an innocent civilian. So at that time, the minimum use of force is the norm in such situations.
That's a good thing. You always want to try to minimize civilian casualties and not just be blatantly firing into houses and walls and stuff, because you never know who's actually in there.
Very direct question again. I always fear bringing up the topic of movies about the military with actual military vets. Which side are you on? Are you okay with military movies, or do you think that it's not a correct depiction? Which I'm sure it's not in many ways. But does that anger you? Or, just generally, what's your opinion on military movies?
See, communication, expressing yourself, showcasing what you are doing, keeping the security as confidentiality aspect in mind, I'm all for it. Our operations, especially in counter-terrorist and counter-insurgency areas, are so transparent. We need to tell our stories.
Why?
We need to tell the public, national and international, this is how we conduct our operation. There is a very false narratives being made by the enemies of the state or people who are not friendly to India. We need to counter that narrative with actuals. Truth prevails. Transparency prevails. No narrative building will have any ground to stand on if other party is telling the truth and transparently.
So how are those enemies building the narratives? Through social media?
There's a whole lot of machinery into it.
Okay.
Social media is one part of it. Diplomatic efforts are there, political efforts are there, and all other types of engineering of mind of various people. So, but when you tell a story, suppose I have to make some sort of a serial on Indian Army's operations in Kashmir. I must do thorough research, starting from what type of recruitments, the uniform they wear. If a person is 20 years of age or 25 years of age, he has to be a captain, maximum major. No, he can't be a lieutenant general. So it has to align to the reality. Then it becomes, unfortunately, I don't want to say it, but I have to say it, Indian cinema, the research work in the defense-related movies, although it has come of age, lot has changed, but there's still lot to be desired.
Yeah, and I hear this as a general narrative from the Indian military.
Yes, because It's not that I'm from the army. If you are, say, whatever you're doing, if your profession is projected and there are lacunas in that image, you would feel bad, and then the image being projected is not correct.
Yeah.
I'll give you a small example.
So I just want to add on to what he was saying about Indian cinema. I've only seen about 3 or 4 Indian movies, but I really did enjoy them. But one thing I noticed is that Indian cinema does tend to have a lot of song and dance numbers, such as in Kasari, for example. However, in Sher Shah, there was no song and dance number, which I think was an excellent choice. I think having a dance sequence would have taken away from the seriousness of the movie. What do you guys think?
In 70s and 80s, the Hindi movies which came, there used to be one retired colonel with handlebar mustache, 12-bore gun in his hand, and trying to protect his daughter from everyone around. And he would be carrying that gun even inside his house. I just told on some other program this. And now that image has to change.
Yeah.
It's a soldiering is a serious business. The storytelling about soldier has to be done very, very seriously. We can't say that I am making a movie, but then commercial compulsions want there should be a dance sequence in that, there should be a song sequence in this. How can you have a dance and song on the border?
What's your favorite war movie that you've ever seen?
Exactly. I don't think having that dance sequence in Sher Shah would have worked.
A lot of them.
Okay.
A lot of them. And at the intellectual level, there's a very little known movie in India, at least internationally. The movie is called Breaker Morant.
Okay.
It's about a Boer War in South Africa.
Okay.
And it's about an Australian officer who was working with a British officer. And it's more of a court-martial movie.
Why intellectual level?
Why I'm saying it's not that physical violence is not there. There is a little bit of it. And it's not that the armies are fighting. It's a very specific incident has happened. And then that officer is put through a court-martial. So 70% of the movie is of court-martial and pros and cons and trying to question the ethos and ethics and whys and ifs and buts of it. So it's a very intense movie from that point of view.
Okay.
I like that movie.
And from a more action perspective, any movie that you felt got it right in terms of real combat scenarios or real army scenarios?
A lot of good movies. Where Eagles Dare, the Saving Private Ryan, and even the World War movies and all. I think more of them are very good movies.
So Saving Private Ryan is a classic movie you need to watch. It is very realistic, especially the opening D-Day sequence. When it comes to other classic and realistic movies, you have Black Hawk Down, We Were Soldiers, Platoon, Band of Brothers, and The Pacific. And the third miniseries in that trilogy is Masters of the Air, which should be coming out real soon.
Saving Private Ryan is a very intense movie.
It's a very intense movie.
And
let me tell you, a lot of young boys and girls might feel soldiering is all about firing and killing. No, a soldier is a very, very human person. He's a very emotional person. Because children get emotional when they cannot meet the targets at the end of the quarter or a month. For him, the targets are how many deaths he has avoided, how many soldiers or buddies he has saved, how many enemies of the nation he has eliminated.
Yeah.
His quantification is different. Now look at that. Some people can't see blood on the TV screen.
Yeah.
Now he's seeing it day in and day out. His emotional strength has to be understood. He's staying away from his family. His wife is managing the household, the children, the upbringing, looking after the old parents, looking after the property, all by herself in the village.
Yeah.
He, being aware of all these issues, still giving his 200% on the front. This man, his contribution has to be acknowledged, understood, and appreciated.
Well
maybe
said.
For deeper context on what you just spoke about, I actually want to highlight Saving Private Ryan's beginning, where they've shown D-Day, I believe. Do you remember that scene, the way they've shot it? For those who don't know about D-Day, basically it was one very important event in the history of World War II.
I think everyone should know about Normandy. It was also called Operation Overlord, but it was the Allied invasion of France to help stop the Germans, and is actually the largest amphibious assault of all time.
It was towards the end of World War II where American soldiers, the Allied soldiers actually invaded a French beach where they had to take on German soldiers who were on the beach.
June 6, 1944. I actually visited those beaches, and it is definitely something that I'll never forget.
So the beginning of Saving Private Ryan is a very intense scene where they've shown what happens when you're actually in a scenario like that. And it's one of those movies that it puts you at the edge of your seat right from the beginning, and it's difficult to watch. The beginning is extremely difficult because of the way they've shot it. They show guts falling out. They show people screaming, people with like their hands blown out. That's what I want to highlight here as well. So when you're talking about this seeing blood day in, day out, the intensity that they've shown in that D-Day scene, is that more common than most civilians think?
See, Second World War was a very, very, you can say, bloody war. A lot of young boys, because their conscription, the young boys as young as 15, 16, 17, were also taken to the battlefront. And the casualties, because it was a contact warfare, the physical contact, and there were men dying.
Yeah.
There are civilians dying. So the intensity of that war was different in terms of physical human losses.
More civilians than military died in World War II, by far.
An injury.
And injuries, and the impact on the psyche. Whereas what we are discussing today is like Indian Army has fought 71 war, 65 war, we have fought on Kargil, and then counter-terrorist counter-thing. Here, things are different. And then, of course, little bit of picturization, the intensity was highlighted also. But for a given individual, when his body gets hit, then that hand blowing off or the intestines coming out can happen to anyone in the combat zone.
Have you been close to death at any point?
My wife has heard my death news twice.
Really?
Once when she was, I think, 8 months pregnant.
They declared you dead.
Yes, she saw on the TV.
Well, that must have been very traumatic for his wife, especially being 8 months pregnant. I can't imagine how stressed out she was, which means that the baby was also stressed out.
My death news, and not declared me death. There was some misunderstanding. I have written a book which is coming out now. Kitne Ghazi Gaye, Kitne Ghazi Gaye. In that,
so I'm not going to try to pronounce the title of that book, but if someone can tell me what that means in English, I would appreciate it.
this aspect, the emotional aspect which you talked about now that the topic has come up, is given out very, very in good detail. Like a soldier is doing his duty. They are just now saying the wife holds the family together. The wife, the father, the mother, the children, their sacrifice goes unnoticed. Like in my case, both the times, I've written in great detail about this in my book, but both the times I was not present when my children are born. Both the times I was not present when they joined their college. Both the times I was not present when they joined their professional college. Both the times I was not present when they did their 10th or did their 12th. And she managed all by herself. In addition, there is news of husband being dead. One news got clarified after 12 hours.
Why? But what was the logic?
See, first time it happened. Second time my wife was pregnant, about 8 months pregnant, when this news came. And she saw it on the TV that the first time this happened, Major so-and-so killed in Lolab. That is the area I was posted in North Kashmir.
So that's why in the U.S. military, if there's ever any deaths in combat or in training, they actually have to confirm with the unit on who died, and they have to get a hold of their family members before their names actually hit the news.
Major, my name KJ Singh, of Rashtriya Rifles. And she, the whole night, she could not sleep, but she also felt, she was staying with her parents. Her parents were old, that tomorrow morning they should not get the news first. She had to prepare them. And then when the newspaper came, newspaper had the same news. She hid the newspaper from her parents, did not cry, did not show her emotions, and kept it to herself. And she was pregnant. Now, this is the strength of the second time. I was a commanding officer. Again, 2 children. One was just about 2 years old, 3 years old, and one was about 8, 9 years old. She again got the news in the night. Again, Colonel KJ Singh in J&K killed. And she again, the whole night, she could not sleep. And here, something very important happened. Now, she is a commanding officer's wife. She did not want the other Jawans or the officers' wives to see tomorrow morning her in a shattered condition. She held herself together and showed as if it's okay. You can imagine the strength our families have.
Very, very strong woman.
That is how their sacrifice, their contribution in the soldier's life must be acknowledged, appreciated, and honored. I think they are the most powerful women on this planet.
So I think one of the phases most associated with your tenure is your time in Kashmir. And even if someone reads your Wikipedia page, it's very evident that you worked a lot towards peace. You actually encouraged the mothers of the insurgents to convince them to not be insurgents. And I think that's a very noble way of kind of putting the right message across and trying to do things in the right way. But I also want to ask you a very brutal question here, which is that civilians who are sitting in Mumbai, Delhi, etc., what do they not understand about the reality of Kashmir? You've had 6 tenures, I believe?
6 in Kashmir, 7 in Jammu and Kashmir, total 8 tenures in counter-terrorist, counter-insurgency areas.
Beginning in 1990 up till as recently as
2020.
Okay. What has changed in Kashmir and what do civilians not understand about the reality? Because civilians will turn to one news channel and they'll say something, another news channel will say the complete opposite. Traditional news media has lost its reputation because of these things. We're not getting into the details of why they sway in either direction, but I want to know from a soldier, what's the reality on ground?
See, Kashmir or Jammu and Kashmir issue.
So if he was there in 1990, that means that he was probably there during the Kashmiri Pandit exodus, the whole Kashmir Files thing. So it'll be interesting to see if he actually talks about that.
Without going into much of a history, I'll just restrict to the terrorism point of view. Pakistan wanted Kashmir to be destabilized, to be unhappy, and Pakistan wanted something to keep projecting that Kashmir card so that people don't ask them the questions about their domestic failures. May it be political, may it be economic, and may it be military or whatever diplomatic, which have now become very pronounced in Pakistan's own backyard. They are in an economic mess. They have so much of political issues and all those things. So one thing which binds them together is Kashmir. So they wanted Kashmir to keep burning. So when it happened in 89, when it started, I was there as a young captain, 88, first time I went to Kashmir. When the Kashmiri Pandits came out, I'll tell you why this thing is. Kashmiri Pandits came out, the population demography changed. Kashmiri Pandits were basically through the education profession, plus other businesses, but the education collapsed. The village schools, which were made of wood those days, those were burned down by terrorists. So children were not getting good education because good teachers had left, most of them, and there was a problem. Thereafterwards, the Hurriyat, the Hartals or lockdowns started. Every second day used to be Kashmir lockdown or this for that reason or this reason, and the schools weren't open. The children would not go to school for 200 to 250 days in a year because of these lockdowns. You can pick up your grocery if you feel there are 3 days lockdown today, or you can pick up after 3 days of another 7 days, but you cannot catch up on your syllabus.
So just one point I want to make. I think these days if you're unable to physically go to school, as we all learned from the pandemic that you can do e-learning and go to school online. But obviously back then in the 1980s and 90s, that technology was not available yet.
Which you have missed about 80% of the classes. Then they were promoted en masse without exams. As a result, the base of education was very weak. Then they come to 10th, 12th class, when they have to compete for getting admission in good professional college or good universities. So naturally, when the child has not been through a good education upbringing, they could not compete. Now, because of 370 and 35A, mostly 35A, the industry or the multinational corporations were not allowed to come into Kashmir for establishing industry. So the job opportunities were less, economic growth was less. And because of terrorism, Kashmir is basically a tourism-oriented society and agrarian society, basically fruits. And when the terrorism was there, the tourists stopped coming. So a lot of hoteliers, a lot of transport businesses, shopkeepers, they lost their income. Coupled with this, in 1990, when India opened up to world economy and world became a global village, 1990 is the time when terrorism started in Kashmir. Here there was economic growth happening, job creation happening. There, the education going down, the economic growth going down, the job creation going down. And what happened in the end? When the boy could not get into a good university, good college, he was like a cannon fodder for the terrorist to be recruited. And this is exactly what Pakistan wanted. Pakistan did not want these young Kashmiri boys to get good education, good job. Then they will not ask for what Pakistan is asking. So the whole ecosystem which worked towards it. And now, after 5th of August 2019, the 370 having been abrogated, there's a lot of investment which is going in, there's a lot of peace which is happening, there's a lot of awareness which has come in. So things are on the upward graph now, and I'm sure they will change for good.
So I'm enjoying the podcast so far, and I really admire the fact that he did spend some time talking about the emotional aspect that military families have to go through. I really do admire his wife. She sounds like a pillar of strength. The fact that she had to keep it all together for her family, her unborn child, and for the other soldiers' families, I mean, that says a lot about her, and that's just indicative of what soldiers' families have to go through. So my respect goes out to all the family members out there who has someone serving in the military. So thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Once part 2 is filmed, I'll put it right here, and I will link another military-themed podcast for you right here. If you do want to help support the channel, I could always use a like, sub, share, or thanks.